back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside and out. I'm Rich Harrison. Thank you for joining us again. Still with the same crew for part 2 of this week's episode covering NBA free agency and NBA draft grades. And that is Drew Barton, Jackson Anagi, Jake Kopstick, and Cam Reel, and of course Mookie, who has been helping us break ties with the grading process when necessary. So let's keep it moving. So next up is Houston Rockets. That was one of Booney's teams. They chose Amen Thompson with pick 4 and Cam Whitmore at pick 20. I personally, and I probably think everyone here probably at least likes this draft. I love this draft. Thompson is hopefully the team's point guard in the future, though they're supposed to be looking for people like Fred VanVleet in free agency. He's certainly not a lock to succeed by any means. As we said before, he's not a good shooter. He's already 20, hasn't even played at the college level. However, getting Whitmore at number 20, wow, what a steal. I think it's steal the draft. Apparently he didn't impress in private workouts. Also, he totally denied that there was anything. This is after he was picked. So I don't know why he would have any reason to lie now, but he totally denied there were any injury concerns. I heard a little more about this, and apparently, but it's still not clear whether it was poor performance on the court or just a poor attitude in general. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if it came down to his attitude, because we saw some of that at Villanova, where he didn't have the best body language. He was clearly upset at times. And I kind of ignored that, thinking, yeah, it's not a great look, to obviously display your displeasure, but at the same time, Villanova, every time I watch him, I shake my head because they didn't get him the ball. So yeah, the Rockets roster overall still remains very young. And as I said, they're going to be looking to add a few veterans via free agency to try to jump up into a possible contender once again. They're also looking at Brook Lopez and some other very veteran players, proven winner types. So there's still, like I said, I don't think Thompson's ready to be the point guard. Kevin Porter's not the answer. But so that's one of their definite holes. But I think this draft is definitely a solid A. Anyone disagree?
100% a solid A. Jake, you might have heard about this too, Rich. I think one of the things I was hearing was that Kyle Neptune was actually giving out some pretty negative reports on Cam Whitmore. I'm not sure how accurate that was, but I was seeing things leaking out that Neptune was telling organizations do not, this kid's got the worst attitude and terrible practice player and everything. So I am kind of curious if that's true. It's just a very interesting look across the board for all of them.
Neptune would do that. I don't think he's a real Villanova guy, and I don't think he's going to last at Villanova long.
It just seemed like a very interesting move. We're so used to Villanova just being buttoned up.
That's not what Villanova coaches do.
Yeah.
And
God, Rich.
They had an awful season, and I think a lot of the blame rests on him. If he's going to be an excuse maker and a deflector, Villanova University does not need him. Jake?
I don't really know what to make of this here, because if Kyle Neptune's telling people bad things about Cam Whitmore, yes, you can be like, well, why would you do that? But at the same time, does that help anybody if you're going to lie? I don't think it does anything for you.
It doesn't help anybody to do it one way or the other, except save his ass, cover his ass.
But it's that's your word. If you're going to give a team that's going to spend millions of dollars on this guy, you have to be accountable here, I guess. Second thing, Ed Pinckney works in basketball ops for the Rockets. Ed Pinckney, Rich, 1985 Nova
One of my favorite all-time college players.
Yep. So I did because I'm the last couple of days I've still been trying to figure the situation out. And I can't find what the deal is. Apparently, he had a knee injury in high school. He had a thumb injury at Villanova. That's as far as the medicals that I know. So when I heard that, they just said he's got bad medicals. Okay, well, what? What was it? Like, I'm still trying to find the reason here.
He says
fell this far.
He says he's perfectly fine.
I have no idea. Every time he got interviewed after a game, he sounded like a typical Villanova guy. He says all the right things. Now, yes, there was some bad body language at times. I think he was forcing shots because if it was prolonged stretches where he didn't touch the ball.
Right.
But to me, that's just because he's young. I think his second or third year in the Villanova system, you see they mess up. They turn the ball over. They run back the other way and clap. They never get down. It's like a next play mentality. But I just think he's a younger guy. He got thrown into the mix, didn't really have a ramp up period in the offseason. He got hurt to come right in. Like I don't understand this at all. I think there was a lot of teams that made some dumb decisions to not. I like the Lakers, the Warriors, not to bash their pick, but if you have this talented of a dude sitting there in the middle of the first round, you're a contender. Like you wouldn't want to take a shot on him, especially if you have the Lakers and you have this year's pick. But how many more do you have for the next 5 years? Like, I don't know. I don't understand the slide. I love the draft, and I really like Amen Thompson too. And that's what makes me like it even more. So, really good draft for the Rockets. But again, I can't pinpoint a reason that's been confirmed by like a big source exactly what was wrong with Cam Whitmore. Medical.
Neptune would not be doing his program any favors. Most coaches, no matter how shitty the player is, if you interview a coach in between the end of the season and the draft, they will tell you everything positive about their players possible because they don't want to be seen as somebody who badmouths his own players. They want to make the program look as positive as possible, and they want to attract other recruits. This would be self-defeating by Neptune. So it would be against what 99.9% of other coaches do. And I'm saying if he did it, to me, it's fireable offense.
Yeah, I don't know how credible. I just was reading some things as reports come out that he was not speaking very glowingly of Whitmore. And from a healthy standpoint, I mean, he looked fine at the combine when he put on a hell of a show there. He looked explosive and he looked good throughout the season. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't like, somebody didn't perform at the combine. He went out there and did his thing. A lot of guys didn't even bother to do that. I mean, Jake, I have been railing on Kyle Neptune for months since he got the job. What are other people in Philly saying about him?
I think they're good. They're not ready. I think it's if you want to like rail on him, fine. But like, there's some people that are like calling for his head, and I was like, no, you're ridiculous. Like the team is going to be way better next year. I don't think they were good enough, quite frankly, this year because you had all the injuries you could deal with. You had to play, but you had to like there was 3 freshmen, 2 of which Mark Armstrong and Whitmore were getting minutes like a lot, and then Brendan Hausen was coming in, and they don't play freshmen there. Like that's not what they do.
Yeah, well, you know what? Last year they had to. They needed them. And they did play some freshmen. They just played the wrong freshmen. And it almost makes me seem like all the yes men got the playing time and the people who didn't like completely fall in line, and you might say, well, that's the way it should be. And maybe it should. But all I'm saying is that team could have been better. That team could have made the NCAA tournament. Were they going to win it? No.
Yeah, I mean they weren't healthy the whole year. Like you missed Justin Moore, and he didn't really get back to full strength until like February.
Right, and it took him a while. It took him like the last couple of games to actually even look like himself.
Exactly. So you were missing him. You had Slater playing hurt. Longino was out for off and on, which unfortunately has been the story with him. I think he's a solid player and a contributor when he's in there. He just keeps getting hurt, and then dude Whitmore get hurt for a little bit.
Right.
So and what hurt him too is Justin Moore is like equipped to be a point guard and can be a lead ball handler. But when he wasn't in there, like it was Mark Armstrong, who was a freshman, and Chris Archidiakon. And you had Gillespie the year before.
Right.
But think of how much of a drop off that is. They to
That's
me,
huge. It's huge.
they
And
weren't
it
good
really
enough
was
to
the
be
first
better.
time in this year will be the first time ever in Justin Moore's career that he's going to be asked to play the lead guard for an entire season as a starting lead guard. So,
Yep. But they
All
will
right.
be significantly better. Sorry, go ahead.
And if they're not, I will definitely be on the picket lines around the university for Neptune's head. All right, so moving on, the Pacers were my team. They came away with Jarris Walker at 8, Ben Shepherd at 26, Mojave King at 47, Isaiah Wong at 55, and Oscar Tshiebwe as an undrafted free agent, which is a nice pickup in my mind, somebody that a lot of us thought there was a good chance he would get drafted at the end of the second round. So the Pacers came into the draft with 5 picks, including 3 first-rounders. They left with 5 players, including Tshiebwe, and plus a future first-rounder, 2 future second-rounders, and $4.4 million in cash via the Lakers. However, so it's a nice haul overall, but, the only player I'm really certain of is Jarris Walker. And I think they made a real nice move to drop back 1 spot to get the man they wanted in the first place. And they got 2 additional second picks. You can't ask for anything more. You get your guy and 2 picks. But I think, power forward was the obvious hole in that team, and they should have solved that in the long run. However, I'm not so sure the rest are going to be able to contribute right away, if ever. In fact, Mojave King is reportedly going to be used as a draft and stash as he's apparently headed back to the Australian NBL for next season. So who would figure? I mean, guys have been playing professional ball for like 4 years, and they're not going to be bringing him on. And selecting Shepherd, I suppose, is really where I get a little balled up. Given that he just had 1 outstanding season, played 4 years at Belmont. So we're not talking about, if he struggled, he especially struggled in those first 2 years. So, if he struggled at Kentucky or North Carolina or Duke, I get it. Struggling at Belmont, that's not great. And just like, Olivier Maxence Prosper, he kind of was a combine darling, played really well in the games, tested it out really well. And that's really why he ended up in the first round, not too far from Prosper himself. So I just think, skipping over somebody like Bryce Sensabaugh at 26 and then picking up a shooter, say like a Moni Bates, in the second round would have been maybe the way to go. And so that's why I'm not in love with this draft. So I gave the Pacers a B+, which is slightly, they came away with a similar haul to Charlotte, but I just thought Charlotte got more overall talent. So I'm just taking a grade just slightly under Charlotte. Anyone, any thoughts here?
I'm going to agree. I like the B+ here. I think you hit it right on the money. That was like a no-brainer. If the Wizards called and it wasn't for Walker, like you're going to walk away with 2 more picks and you're still going to get your guy. It's a great trade. But here's the thing. I'm a Ben Shepherd guy, and I have been. And what I like about what the Pacers have done the last couple of years is they've added a lot of quickness, some athleticism, some bounce to their perimeter that they didn't have before. It was boring. It was vanilla. And they're adding a lot of quality wings that are athletic and can put pressure on the rim. Ben Shepherd can shoot it a little bit. So I shouldn't even say a little bit. He was a pretty damn good shooter last year.
Very good.
I know he's an older guy, and I get the whole combine thing. Or as you said last year, he was the flavor of the month. But I do really think it's a solid pick. I like Mojave King too. He was another guy that played very well at the combine. So I think ultimately get himself a spot in the draft. I think he's a good
also ultra athletic. I mean, all these guys except for Tshiebwe are ultra athletic. I mean, Wong isn't ultra athletic, but he's athletic.
Yeah. So I really, really like this draft, to be honest with you. I might even be inclined to maybe go a little bit higher, but I think B+ is very, very solid. If
I move them up, then Jackson would have to move the Hornets up. You know what I'm saying? Because I still think the Hornets came away with a little better talent overall. So
yeah.
But I wouldn't be against it. I just think that, I just kind of didn't like passing over Sensabaugh. That would have been the move I would have taken. Clearly, Cam is suffering from some kind of delusional disorder. But Cam, you want to talk about what the Clippers did?
So I had a hard time rating them. Obviously, I'm biased because one of their selections in the draft was Kobe Brown at 30. I'm pretty confident that he's a first rounder. I think there's some upside there in terms of individual creation, but also defense and passing. At 48, they picked up Jordan Miller. Just a pick before Emoni Bates. There's still a couple of other guys on the board there that we love a whole lot more than even Emoni Bates. Obviously, Trace Jackson Davis. Could have gone another direction with Jordan Miller. But to me, the Clippers didn't have a lot of draft capital. There wasn't really a way for them to get draft capital. I really see them in sort of a one more year situation with their current core and just pray to God that they're healthy. I think as far as what they had, I think they did pretty well with what they, the opportunities that they had in the draft. But I went with a B-. I'd love to hear what you guys think.
I think it's definitely Kobe Brown is not a guarantee to make the league, and nor is Jordan Miller. And with a Kobe Brown pick, I'd be willing to give them a C+ if Kobe Brown was their second pick and their first pick was something like Kobe Jones or Andre Jackson, Hunter Tyson, Amari Bailey, Sissoko of G League G League Ignite, and of course Trace Jackson Davis. All those guys I would have preferred over Kobe Brown at 30. And if Kobe Brown was then their next pick, I'd be like, yeah, that's a good draft. But taking Kobe Brown at 30, and I don't have any problem with Miller where he went, but that's about where I thought Kobe Brown would go. So yeah, I got a major problem with this draft. And just think about some of the teams we've given B's to. We gave a B to the Pistons, who got Asir Thompson and Sasser. I just think that I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to rate them relative to what they can really do.
Right.
They've got pick 30 and 48.
See, that's not the way I've been looking at it. I've been looking at it is there's a reason why they're picking where they're picking. They put themselves here. Nobody put them there. And so the teams that had 4 or 5 picks, they're going to get better grades because they came away with more talent. No participation trophies here.
I think it really does come down to how you rate the Kobe Brown pick. I rate it pretty high. I really think that he's kind of a guy that's been underlooked. Mostly just from having seen him play a lot in SEC tournament, in the tournament itself. I think he can do a lot. I think the league is going towards guys that have a lot of versatility. I think he has that offensively. I think he has that defensively. He can rebound. He's got length for his position, which I think he's a wing power forward combo. I like the pick. But as far as rating, I think it's more like they put themselves in the situation where they're picking late, but I gotta grade them based off of what they did with where they're at.
Yeah, but that's not what we're doing. For example, the Nets came away with Clowney, Whitehead, Wilson, Jalen Wilson. Mm-hmm. We gave them a B. Now, you think the Clippers got as much talent as the Nets?
Yeah, but they don't have another pick to get another guy.
Right, but the Nets got that pick by doing something. They got that extra pick by doing something. So we got to look at what talent. Like I said, we can't. I mean,
that's
maybe they did do the best they could, but it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I mean the issue is they're not in a situation where they can really move guys, right? I mean the Nets acquired those picks.
Yeah, whose fault's that?
But that's not necessarily a problem. They're still in a process of trying to contend in the West. I think it's still possible with their roster. We've never seen a healthy version of the Clippers. We probably won't ever, but that's for them to decide in free agency and trade.
There's no way we can give the Nets a B and give the Clippers a B. Just can't. It makes no sense.
I mean, they got a B minus. If you want to go down to C plus, that's fine.
I was personally more like in maybe the C range, more so not because of just like I thought they left better players on the board than Kobe Brown. That was more like why I was at C. I was like, you took Kobe Brown over Colby Jones and Trace Jackson Davis. That's where I was leaning more towards. But I also get what Cam's saying. It's like you have 2 picks, you have 2 back end picks, like. You're kind of pigeonholed into, whatever scraps are left over from, the cream of the crop guys. But I was more in the C categories. I'm not a Kobe Brown guy. And there's guys on the board that I for sure would have taken over him, taken over him.
How would we all feel if they came away with Andre Jackson and Trace Jackson Davis?
I mean, you could say that about
recently with where they were at.
You could say that about every team on this draft board, though. I mean,
if they had 30 and 48.
And I'm punishing them for passing those guys over.
Yeah, if you have 30 and 48 and you walk out with those 2 guys, to me, given the situation they were in and they still came out with those 2, I'm giving them an A. Personally, if those 2 guys ended up on that roster with a 30 and 48 pick, I'd be like, whatever demon you sold your soul to paid off because that's an A. At those spots to get those 2 guys, that would have been an A to me.
They got 2 guys. They got 2 guys that are 23 years old, and yet they have an ancient roster. Okay, so and they never play young guys. They never. I mean, Terrence Mann is about the only young guy that's played for them in like a decade. Okay, so these guys, 23 years old, and they're just going to sit around, and I don't know if they have enough talent to stick around. So
I mean, I hear you on Jordan Miller. I genuinely think Kobe Brown has the skills. That's my rating. If that's not your rating, that's fine. But that's fair. We all have different guys that we like more than others. And yeah, definitely. There's guys that went into the second that probably could have been in his spot. It comes down to taste and evaluation. He does have the numbers. He really does.
That he does.
To me, it's like the issue too is like the Nets. They have the flexibility to try and make some moves to acquire more draft picks. Like could the Clippers have made that decision? Sure, but I think alternatively, they could look at their roster and say, we've got depth here. We need that depth because we got a couple of guys at our top that are always injured. We're not trying to get more young guys at the moment because we need our depth. I think as draft guys, I think we get a little bit biased towards we want more young guys, we want youth, we want that potential, we want that talent. Sometimes when you're trying to build a roster to compete, you got to go with the veteran guys.
Well,
I don't necessarily agree with it.
I picked the 2 players I said I would have taken were veterans as well.
Yes, but again, with the TJD, that could be any team that's picking basically from pick like 20 onward, because that's about where we had him.
Right. But like with Cam Whitmore, we're saying, hey, why didn't these guys take Cam Whitmore? We're going to say the same thing, and we're punishing them for it. Ultimately, you got to look. You can't like look back at past trades and say, well, okay, why does this team have 1 pick and why does this team have 5 picks? If you start doing that, your draft analysis will never end. Okay, so you just kind of got to go with what they came in with and what they left with. And to me, the Clippers didn't come away with a lot, but we got to move on. And don't feel bad because I'm going to take Jake to task too. So we're going to move on to Jackson's beloved LA Lakers, who came away with a nice haul if you include the undrafted free agents they brought on board, who I think have a good chance of sticking.
Yeah, so they got Jalen Hood-Schifino at 17. I mean, as Jake pointed out earlier, I think I would have liked to see them just take a chance on Cam Whitmore, but I understand if you're not able to interview him. I don't think they were able to get him in for a pre-draft workout. I can't imagine they would have. But I mean, I would assume, it's fair to pick someone that you've talked to, seen work out. So I understand not wanting to take the chance, but still a guy that's projected in the top 5, you can get him at 17. I would have liked to see that. With just that high of his high potential and skill level. But I understand just taking someone that you like and you've talked to and you've seen work out. So I still like the Hood-Schifino pick. I know we're not really getting into free agency, but they just picked up Gabe Vincent and Taurean Prince.
Wow.
So
Vincent. Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know actually if they'll re-sign Russell now with that.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, but Hood-Schifino just adds to the guard depth. I'm assuming they're going to re-sign Reeves, but just adding more depth to that, I think, is solid move. At 40, they got Maxwell Lewis, which I think is pretty good value at 40. I know some people thought he might even end up in the lottery earlier in the draft process, but that didn't end up happening. I think he has potential to be a 3-and-D guy for the Lakers. Obviously, when we talked about our mock draft, he was struggling in conference play for Pepperdine, which pretty big concern. But I think when he'll have a much smaller role, obviously, in the NBA. And if he's just asked to do what he's good at, which is shooting, and he has the physical tools to be a good defender, I think at 40, it's a good bet that he could, turn into a rotational guy and potentially just a solid 3-and-D guy. And for their two-way contracts, they got Colin Castleton and Demoy Hodge. So these were two guys that I think Hodge we didn't have projected in the second, but Castleton I think they're both around like the second round pick value.
He was on our mock draft on the site. I had Castleton being one of the last picks
on the site. Okay, so I think they're both both older prospects. I believe Castleton 23.
Yeah,
I think Hodge is 24.
We're getting close to it.
Yeah, but I think they'll be able to come in. I know they're two-way guys, but should be able to provide at least, at the very role players. I think that Castleton's a good center. I think he averaged 3 blocks a game, so he'll give some interior defense and scoring. So I think that's a good pickup of the two-way contract. And then Hodge as well, good shooter and energetic defender. So I think they both add value, and I think positions the Lakers really need more depth into, and just wing shooting, defending, and also just the interior defense, which I'm hoping they pick up a center in the free agency. But I think they got really good value in their two-way contracts, picking up 2 older guys that could be role players in the future. But so I gave them a B just because I think the Hood-Schifino pick is good. But yeah, I think I would have liked them probably maybe taking a chance on one more. But I think there's all overall solid pickups.
Yeah, Castleton, I think is going to, stick around for a while in the league. Smart player, underrated passer. I think he might even have a jump shot hidden away in there. Hodge is great shooter, though he only played at high level 1 year, but he's got really nice size for a wing. So really two good picks that were definitely wouldn't have been a surprise to me if they were, late second round picks. Anybody else disagree with the B? I think B minus. I was thinking, I thought Hood-Schifino at 17, they could have done better. That's the only thing that, holds me back. Cam Whitmore's just one example. I think, Clowney, Whitehead, maybe Chris Murray are arguably were better looks. Sensible, might be a player I would put ahead of Hood-Schifino. As we mentioned last week with Hood-Schifino, the one thing I don't like about his game is There's not much to his offensive game. It's that pull-up shot or take it to the basket, which he's not particularly good at. And so, yeah, he doesn't really have a lot of moves. So he kind of plays like a spot-up player. Well, I guess not, because he's really good with the pull-up. So that's very handy in the pick and roll. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, it doesn't have the kind of moves like, say, a Amoni Bates does. He's just not that kind of shot creator. So anyone have a problem with the B for the Lakers? Actually, before we get on Memphis, you really, really have to start, like, we can't make excuses anymore for these teams, especially with the new tax rules and everything. These teams, and you look at the numbers that are coming out today of the contracts, guys over 30 are on the downside. All right. So, I mean, and the Mavericks are nowhere near being ready to compete. And yet they just threw good money after bad. I mean, you can't let these teams get away with it. I mean, these guys, hacks are making, just normal players. They probably could be replaced by a lot of these two-way players, and you wouldn't probably miss much, are making $20 million a year.
It's true.
And they keep on doing it.
Yeah.
And there are certain teams that keep on doing it. The Lakers, the Clippers, the Mavericks. Phoenix has now become the worst of them all.
Yeah. That's the worst. I forget who coined this, but new owner syndrome. It's the worst example of it I think I've ever seen. I mean, if this fails, they're done. They're truly just done.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing left.
Yeah, for like 10 years.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to Jake's Memphis, who actually, they definitely took a different approach. They went more on the upside, maybe even draft and stash. I would assume one of their players is going to be draft and stash.
Yeah, so first of all, they were supposed to pick at number 25 in the first round. They traded that pick and the Warriors 2024 first round pick, which is top 4 protected, to Boston. And they traded Tyus Jones to Washington, who filled in very admirably for Ja Morant when he's had to. However, they acquired Marcus Smart as a part of that 3-team trade, and they were left with 2 second-round picks this year. Pick number 45 they used on G.G. Jackson, who, when you talk about that 25th pick they had, you start to creep in that range where you could have had G.G. Jackson. And then they drafted at number 56 Tariq Gaborovich, who is a likely draft and stash guy. And look, I actually liked it because they got tremendous value with G.G. Jackson, but also them getting a point guard in Marcus Smart, who's been on a couple deep playoff runs, went to the finals, not last season, the season before, been a successful point guard in the league for a long time, will defend his tail off, gives them a seasoned veteran who's got postseason experience, who's going to fill in for Ja when he's out, and is still going to be a big part of the rotation when Ja's in. So I might be higher on this market. It sounds like I'm going to be higher on this Marcus Smart trade than Rich will be, but I gave them a B+ because I did like them getting a proven commodity. Although they basically swapped Marcus Smart and Tyus Jones and paid some draft capital price for it. I'm a big fan of Marcus Smart in this situation, and because of that is why the grade is so high. A draft and stash guy at number 56 isn't going to move the needle, but I do think G.G. Jackson to 45. I mean, I think Cam mocked him at 30 when we did our mock. And I saw him going late first, early second in a lot of mocks. So to get an upside pick like that, and then to get a point guard, Marcus Smart, seasoned vet, postseason experience, I actually like this. I'm probably higher on this than a lot of people are, but I did really like this for the Grizzlies.
On Babarovic, Turkish player, he's played in the highest level Turkey league, played for one of the better clubs in Turkey. I can't remember the name, but they also played in EuroLeague. He got hurt at the end of last year and really didn't get up to speed this year. But he's a 6'7" wing who can shoot. He's like a 40% three-point shooter with nice size. He was once considered a top 10 prospect coming out of Europe for his age group. But of course, the injury set him back over the last 2 years. So not I wasn't surprising to me to see his name if you follow European basketball. I thought that Marcus Smart, when you consider Tyus Jones too, they also lost Tyus Jones in that move. Is Marcus Smart that much better than Tyus Jones, and it's also worth 2 first-round picks? Tyus Jones in a first-round pick to me would have been a fair price. They gave up 2. I don't like that. And G.G. Jackson, Jake's right. He was a steal at 45. I personally can't give them any better of a grade than I can give the Clippers.
Okay. That's fair. I'm just higher on, and I know they had to pay the price for it, but, and I get what you're saying. Like, and Tyus Jones filled in really well. It's almost like, well, what was the need for that? Because he has filled in very well. But I do think this is going to be a good situation for him to get it. First time in his career, he'll be with a new team.
Oh yeah,
he's gonna have to start right away, and then he'll still probably won't start, but will still play a lot of minutes, and is going to give them, because they want to make a deep playoff run. Josh to get his shit together, and they're going to have a guy who's been on some deep playoff games.
Right. And the difference between Smart and Jones, arguably Jones is a better offensive player, but Smart can guard guards like Joel Embiid, like we saw in the playoffs.
Yeah,
so that's
offense defense trade off. I think is where it is.
Right.
Well, I think too, you got to think, like, when Ja comes back, Tyus Jones's value to the team drops because he is a point guard, right? Once Ja comes back, you can still play Marcus Smart some pretty heavy minutes as a small ball 3. He can play as a 2. He can share minutes with Bane. So it works roster wise because they're getting a guy that they can play with or without Ja.
Yeah, I mean, he played at the 2 position a lot for Boston.
This is the type of move
over the years.
I'm with Jake on this. So maybe not B+, because I'm not a big G.G. Jackson guy, but I really do think the trade is actually a big win for them. I think Jake's spot on I think this is what they need. Just culturally, they seem to have some issues, obviously. The team's been kind of all over the place. Marcus Smart's going to bring a toughness and a grit to this team and kind of a no-nonsense attitude. And he wasn't a part of a dynasty, but he's been sure of a hell of a lot closer than the Memphis Grizzlies have, and the Grizzlies do a lot of talking. Smart's the type of guy that will help them back that up and brings a legit, I know what it takes to get to an NBA championship. I have faced down Steph Curry. I've done all those things. They need a guy like this. And this is one of those things where like the Warriors paying $25 million for Draymond. In some situations, I think you have to overpay, and the X factors like that experience and that off the court thing that they bring. And this might be kind of a situation, at least in the Grizzlies' head, where it's like we have to overpay because he brings us not just the defense, the ability to score the ball a little bit, play 1 through 3, but there's that element of leadership. We've been trying to do this young guy thing with Ja at the center of it, and it's not working. Maybe Marcus Smart can help kind of change that and right the ship.
Well, let's let Jake make the final decision. And the way I'll present my argument to the judge is, Jake, you got the Nets that came away with 2 players with good upside. Another player should be a decent backup. Mm-hmm. Memphis comes away with Smart, Jackson, and Babarovich, but they had to give up 2 second-round picks and Tyus Jones to get there. So, you right now you have Memphis getting a better grade than the Nets.
We can even that out then. What do you
make it a B? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Make them the same. Okay.
We can do that, yes.
All right. Sounds good. I can't seem to change it for some reason. A higher power wants it to stay a B+. All right, so we're going to move on to the Heat. That's Cam's team. I think I'm going to take a guess that Cam took that same approach, which is kind of doing what they could with what they had. And so, which is not exactly how I wanted to do this. So we got the different ways of looking at it. But
no, totally.
Go on, Cam.
To me, again, not a team that's trying to add a lot of young talent.
I don't think I said what the team was, by the way. It's the Miami Heat. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah. Obviously, we're talking the Heat here. Not a team that's trying to add a lot of young talent. They've had a whole lot better luck getting undrafted guys, apparently. They had pick 18. They decided to go with Jaime Jaquez, which fit-wise is pretty damn perfect. Talk about a heat culture type of player. A guy that we think, we mocked him a little bit lower. But in a draft where teams are going for more ready-made guys over potential, makes sense that he could go at 18. And, that was their one pick. In the undrafted free agent market, they picked up Drew Peterson, who we discussed on the pod in the mock.
A friend of the show, Drew Peterson.
Oh, yeah. So, again, I was thinking more, they're not trading for more picks. They're not necessarily trading for any guys at this point either. You got one pick. What do you do with it? They get Jaime Jaquez. I think it's a pretty solid pick. I went with a B. But if we're looking at this from the perspective of what did you get, it's pretty obviously a C. They got one guy and one, solid undrafted player. Yeah. What do you guys think? I love the pick for the Heat. I think Jaquez is perfect.
By the way, I think if we didn't discuss it, I certainly was thinking about it. I think we talked about during the mock, or at least I was thinking it, that Jaime Jaquez could be an option for the Warriors at 19. So I wasn't absolutely shocked that he went at 18, but I thought it was a little high. I expected him to go mid-20s.
Yeah, I think I don't have any problem with him at 18. I'm sure there are people out there that were looking at that pick and were like, oh my God, they left so many high upside guys on the board here. Like, what are they doing picking Jaquez? But I think, I think it's fine to give up on the potential play if you're getting a guy that's as solid as Jaquez at 18.
We also have to take into account that Miami's made a living out of the last 5-6 years of turning guys like Max Strus and Gabe Vincent into players. Jaime Jaquez is, in my opinion, better than those guys were coming in. Is more NBA ready. So if they're able to have that
Max Strus didn't play a lick of defense in college.
Yeah, like if Jaime Jaquez somehow finds whatever fountain of youth those guys are drinking from, like he could be a really good, I'm not saying like an all-star, but he could be like a really good player. I might be more like, based on how we've been doing it, I'd say maybe like a B- because I do think that this was the perfect player. There's probably no better player and organization pairing outside of Victor maybe going to the Spurs. This might be the best organization culture pairing with the player. So I do think I would give some credit there. And again, I was willing, we were cool with the Warriors taking him at 19. I think 18 is not too much of an issue. I'd say maybe B- because they did only come away with really one guy that will probably for sure be playing minutes for them. But I think it's definitely in the B. To me, it should be in the Bs.
Well, and then with their track record, Drew Peterson will probably be playing finals minutes next year. So
averaging 20 minutes a game and then have a 25-point outburst against the Celtics. But
exactly. Yeah, he'll have his Kelly Olynyk game and put them away in Game 7.
Well, I guess I'll come back to you, Cam. Do you like this draft better than your Clippers, which we gave a B- to?
I do.
Okay.
I think Jaquez is a better player than Kobe Brown.
Right.
That also, it's a higher pick, so I would expect for them to get a better player.
Right.
I might like Peterson a little bit more, especially knowing their track record with undrafted free agents.
Right.
To me, it's a B. It's really, that's what it is. They had one pick and they knocked it out of the park.
All right. We'll move on to Jake's. Jake's had the Milwaukee Bucks, and boy, did they clean up with the undrafted free agents in addition to having two solid picks.
Yeah, I actually like what they did here, and they got my boy Andre Jackson with the 36 for them, who was just I know they lost in the first round, but they were the number 1 seed in the East, and to add him was one of the best picks of the second round of the draft for me in terms of value. They take an upside swing with Chris Livingston. Not crazy about him, but regardless, he gets it's the last pick of the draft. I'm not going to knock you for the last pick in the draft with who you take. But I like the undrafted free agents they got. Getting a guy in Jay-Z and Gortman who played well at the Combine and, of course, in OTE. I already know Drew's not going to argue with my grade because Timmy's on here. And then they got Amari Moore, who I think could have been worthy of a draft pick late.
Jake, how did you not give him an A? They needed an A. You got to give him an A. They took a Bay Area guy and a tag.
If Timmy was drafted 58, they would have gotten it. But he wasn't. But they got Amari Moore, too, who I really like, who I think is worthy of a last pick in the draft, who got a shot to make the team. So with what they had, I thought they did as well as they could have done. With 2 second-round picks, one of which being the very last pick, and some undrafted free agent slots, I thought they did a very good job considering the assets that they had.
Right. Man, I'll do you one better, Jake. I think this is what it looks like for a team with late picks to have an A draft performance.
With what they had, considering that, I don't hate that. Not at all.
They got pick 36 and pick 58, which is basically an undrafted free agent, right? And then with their actual pickups, they went and got 3 players that not only, in one case, not only drafted, but we think is a rotation player right now in Timmy. Gortman and Moore, both promising players. This is what it looks like. This is how you finesse the system when you don't have good picks. You go and find the guys that other people don't value. I mean, to me, it's an AA minus.
Jake's spot on here.
I'm happy where it's at because, to me, I mean, Andre Jackson, we all thought he was a first-round talent, but late first-round talent. So I don't know. I think in order to get in the A range, you need to come away with, someone, a little higher, like a Cam Whitmore or something like that. One thing I'm going to say is behind Quavion Smith, after the draft, Gortman was the second highest player not drafted on my board. I was so impressed with Gortman when I saw him play this year. Love that wingspan of his. I know he's only 6'1", but a +9 wingspan. Kid's athletic. Kid can shoot a little bit. I like Gortman.
I will say for these 5 players, the fact that the guy that they drafted in Chris Livingston is my least favorite out of these 5 does mean that I think they did a really good job for having these really low picks. Like they ended up I would have taken Timmy, Gortman, or more at 58 before I took Chris Livingston. I mean, Jake's right. It's the 58th pick. You take a guy because you're like, oh, what the hell? But yeah, I think there's a legitimate avenue. I think Andre Jackson for sure, but all 5 of these guys are in the NBA for years, contributing at some to some degree.
I'll say too, a lot of times when a team kills it this much in undrafted free agency, they are purposefully talking to these guys and talking contract so that they don't get drafted. Right? If somebody they're talking to these agents and they're like, please God, give them the worst workouts with all these teams so that we can just sign them.
Apparently,
there you go.
Apparently, Trace Jackson Davis was telling people not to draft him. Livingston was telling people not to draft him. He wanted to go to Milwaukee. And Trace Jackson Davis, I forget, his agent is related to Dunleavy or something like that. I forget. And speaking of Livingston, as I said last week, the kid's numbers aren't representative of how good he is. And I think he has a really nice jump shot. I think he's going to be a good 3-and-D guy. So, yeah. All right. We'll move on to the T-Wolves. One of Drew's teams. What do you got for the T-Wolves? An organization I think is very quickly going in the wrong direction.
So this grade was, I gave him a C-, just full disclosure, which might seem a little bit low. And I think part of it is with all the moves they've been making, this is a team that firmly thinks that they should be in the playoffs and be battling the playoffs. And they drafted, in my opinion, 2 guys that are not going to be beneficial at all this year, and we'll see in the future. So obviously the first player they picked up was Leonard Miller at 33. I believe they traded 2 second-rounders for the rights to move up and get him. Then they give up the Jazz and the Timberwolves in their own second-rounder. Okay, so they gave up 2 for Leonard Miller. Look, it's no secret I am not a Leonard Miller fan. Rich and I have gone back over a year of just being like, this guy doesn't really have it. I will agree that there is legitimate upside there, but I think he is years away from being an NBA, like an actual NBA contributor. And this is a Timberwolves team that has 3 centers on their roster because they just re-signed Naz Reid. They have Cat, they have Gobert. At the 4, they also have Kyle Anderson, Jaden McDaniels, and don't they have the kid from Memphis? I believe Josh Minot.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. Like, he's clearly not going to probably be in the rotation right away. I'll give them some credit because this was a player that a lot of pundits had in the lottery or like right at the end of the lottery, and they did get him at 33. So if we're looking at just raw value upside, it's not the worst pick. I really liked Jalen Clark, who they took second at was it 53. Before he tore his Achilles, I thought he was a first round pick. And I think it's great value for a player that not too long ago was a first rounder, arguably if the best perimeter defender in the country, was showing signs of developing a jump shot. I mean, statistically it wasn't great, but it looked like he was growing into it a little bit. But that Achilles tear changes everything. We know that injury is super tough to come back from. He's not going to be ready to contribute right now. And I think a great example is like, look at Klay Thompson, who he was a 3-and-D guy. That was his thing, the best in the league. And while he can still hit from 3, still average 20 a game, he cannot defend at a high level anymore. Clark is not the shooter that Klay Thompson is, probably, and never will be. And now we have to worry if the defense ever going to get back to where it was. Like, is he going to be able to become a viable enough shooter to really stick if the defense doesn't get back to the point it was? I like his upside as a rebounder. He's a pretty good rebounder. He competes. He did average 2 assists a game on a team with Amari Bailey, Jaime Jaquez, and Campbell. So he has, I think, a pretty decent feel for the game offensively, even though he's not really like a scorer or a shooter. But like at the end of the day, the Wolves drafted 2 guys who are not going to help them this year. I don't know if these guys are going to help them in the foreseeable future. One guy may never be what he was, so it's a gamble. An Achilles tear is no joke. And the other guy is at least in 2 or 3 years away from being a viable NBA player, yet alone a big contributor on a playoff team. So this is a team that's, like I said, they've got 3 centers, 4 forwards. They just drafted another forward center and a guy with an Achilles tear. So I give them a C-. I can see getting up to a C if you want to value the Leonard Miller pick, given where he was supposed to go, where he did go. But I feel bad because I like Jalen Clark, but I can't trust a guy who tore his Achilles, and it's going to hurt him at his best ability is going to be worse off because of it. So I said C-.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, they've let go of a lot of their players who contributed off the bench. Who weren't making a ton of money, but they still let them go because that's how up against the cap they are. Like Travion Prince and Alexander, the kid from Virginia Tech, the combo guard, who played really well, by the way. Probably beside Anthony Edwards, he was probably their second best performer in the playoffs, and they just let him go. And that's what Minnesota's doing. They're cutting. They're just doing what Phoenix had to do is get.
The problem is they're hitching their wagon to Gobert and Cat instead of Booker, Kevin Durant. They're going Gobert and Cat, which is mind-boggling.
Exactly. So yeah, I think C- spot on. Anyone else?
I think C- is perfect. But can we just let it sink in for a second that the Timberwolves GM is the same guy who built the Denver core? Just let that sink in for a second. It just kind of shows you like a lot of this might just come down to dumb luck. Because what the hell is happening in Minnesota, man? This team is a mess. Like the second Tim Connolly came in, it's been a mess. This team is broken.
Well, don't you think Jokic was a little bit of luck? I mean, they let him go all the way to 40.
Totally.
And it wasn't like Jokic wasn't known. That draft was before I even got in this business. But I knew who he was. I had seen him play. And I wasn't even doing this at the time. So a lot of guys missed the boat on him. And I think they were just the lucky club who, for whatever reason, took a chance on him. And now they have the best player in the world.
I mean, like they had made some other great moves too. I mean, at the same time too, a lot of them you can kind of chalk it up to, well, oh, other people aren't as high on this guy, but he's mocked 10 or whatever. Let's take him. That's kind of what they did with Leonard Miller. I don't know if they like particularly love anything that he does because
he's athletic. He's athletic,
Yeah.
but he's not coordinated either. That's the other one.
I mean,
when he
it's one of
stays on
those
his feet,
picks. Yeah, it's one of those picks where you're just like, oh, well, some people think he's good, so let's take him. And realistically, like, I don't think any of us thought that he should be as high as he was in mocks. I think this is really closer to where he should have been.
We had him in the about where he got drafted.
Yeah.
Everybody else had him higher.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, to take a chance with a pick on a guy that's coming back from an Achilles tear, I think is insane. I mean, it's basically a career ender for the average. I mean, it's a career ender for great players. I mean, really, Klay Thompson's just about the only guy that I can think of that's come back from it.
Dominique and Klay are the only guys in recent that I can remember that have come back, and for the most part are still like close to what they were. I think Dominique actually was just as good, but Klay's, and he's still not even as good. If you
Klay happened in his 30s, so
yeah.
Justin Moore of Villanova,
And with Neek, I mean, he basically got blackballed from the league after that. Like, he came back and he was good with that little Clippers run, but after that he was to Europe like really soon afterwards. So I mean you're going for a guy that's unproven in the NBA. Sure, he had some good moments in college, but man, like, you don't know if he's going to be nearly as athletic if he comes back at all. I just think that's crazy to take a draft pick on that guy. Yeah, I mean, C-, it could be a D for me. Yeah, I think you're right on though, Drew.
All right, I think we'll sit where it's at. All right, moving on to another one of Drew's teams, and that's New Orleans Pelicans.
Yeah, so I think the Pelicans I give them a B, and I think this draft, given they had one first-round pick, I think this is kind of a B draft. They had the 14th pick, literally the last pick in the lottery, and they took Jordan Hawkins. I mocked them in our mock taking Jordan Hawkins. They got the best shooter in the draft. We know shooting makes the world go round in the NBA. It just helps that it was packaged with a really solid, ready-made player who has experience, won a national championship, has had good coaching, has upside, I think, to be a solid defender. Hopefully he can build his body to be even better on the defensive end of the ball. And then undrafted, I always pronounce this guy's last name wrong, but it's from Cincinnati. It's Landers. Is it Nolly? And I think this guy is, when I look at undrafted free agents, I didn't see a bunch of Cincinnati, but I think this is the type of guy that you take this flyer on as a potential 3-and-D. You've got a guy who's had good numbers with the Bearcats. Through all his 4 years, he consistently improved as a shooter. He's 6'7", 220 pounds, shot 42% from three on 6 attempts per game. I believe he has a 6'11" wingspan, so you're like, okay, there's some upside that maybe defensively he can use some physical attributes to compete on that end, and he can shoot the ball. So I think this is the type of guy I take a flyer on as an unrestricted free agent. So I think this is a B because Hawkins is probably one of the safer picks, coupled with his title as the best shooter in the draft, and another guy that could very well, with his skill set and physical traits, find a way onto this roster and be a piece. We've seen them have success with guys like Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Alvarado, who weren't super highly touted coming into the league. Alvarado was undrafted. So I could see this if we wanted to go like B- because they really only came out with 2 players. But I just think that this is like, they didn't do anything stupid. They didn't get cute. This is a team that's on the verge of, I think, contending, depending on what happens with Zion, if he ever figures it out. And they just said, let's take a guy that's going to help us, that's not going to cause us any headaches, and is the best player at something in this draft, in my opinion. So I gave him a B, but if we went to like B- because he only came away with really one guy in the actual draft, I'm cool with that.
It's very similar, the situation he were in. And I think they came away with a really good player and a good undrafted player. So I think B's spot on. personally. Anyone disagree?
I totally agree.
All right.
I think Hawkins is a really good fit for them too. And I really think, like, man, the Pelicans, there's so much talent on that roster. If they can figure it out with Zion, that's going to be a scary team. They could just be, I mean, they don't even really need Zion. I think with their depth, they could trade him and they could really build something special.
I thought they should have traded him. But
I'm kind of surprised it didn't happen.
by the way, I recently read that the guy that he has the most problem with in New Orleans is the health and fitness guy, who probably tells him to stop eating so many donuts. No, my donuts.
Man. We got some wild.
No, that's a true story. I'm telling you, they named the guy. They named the guy in the story. It said that's who he has the biggest problem with in the organization. And I can just see the two of them fighting over a dozen donuts. All right. So now we're going to move on to the Knicks. I don't think we're going to have much debate here. Jackson, what'd you give the Knicks? They really came away with quite the unimpressive haul.
Yeah, so the Knicks had no picks in the draft, and their only undrafted free agent pickup was Obi Toppin's brother, Jacob Toppin from Kentucky. I'll keep it short. I mean, he's 23. I mean, he's athletic, but he shot 30% from three on 1.8 attempts a game and 66 from the free throw line, so he can't really shoot. I know he played better at the end of, or the second half of the season for Kentucky, but I'm pretty sure he did not play well at the beginning at all. But, I mean, if this is their only pickup, I have to give him an F. So that's it for the Knicks for me.
It's going to be really funny watching Thibodeau try to decide which Toppin to give less minutes to. That's going to be really interesting.
I was never high on Obi. I had him in the teens the year he went. What did he go? 1, 2, 3? What did he go?
Oh, Toppin was, I think, 11.
Oh, yeah.
He was like 11, I think.
He was
Yeah,
top
he was
10.
lottery.
Okay, well, I had him in the teens that year. I think around 18 or so.
Maybe, he might have been 7.
Okay, so but anyway, I considered him a mid first round pick. And of course, this is the lesser of the two, so I certainly have to give these guys a big old F. I agree, Jackson. All right, we're going to move on to Drew, who's got Oklahoma City. They were pretty busy during the whole process. What did you come up with the Thunder, Drew?
So I gave them a C for like just a okay draft. They didn't do anything spectacular. They didn't do anything terrible. I like Cassian Wallace as a player who they took 10th overall. I think he has a solid floor with just that defensive upside and kind of the attitude in which he plays. I think there's a pretty good floor there. And I do think he showcased at times at Kentucky that there is an offensive game that is there. He was a decent shooter statistically. I mean, nothing crazy, but showed that he could hit a three. So I think he has a solid future ahead of him. I don't project him like super highly. I think he's going to be a good starting caliber NBA player. They picked up Keontae Johnson, friend of the show, at 50. Again, I think just the solid contributor in the NBA is kind of where his future is probably at. You know, he's showcased, he's got the size, the athleticism, he has experience to absorb minutes. You know, he's developed over the years as a, well-rounded scorer and rebounder, so it should help him stick around. The trades that they made, I know we've already talked about them because there was that really weird trade with Denver, and then there was the trade with the Mavs where they moved Bertans and all that around. They don't really make a lot of sense to me. I do like Cam's thought process of like they probably are just they can't spend all these picks or use them all, so they're just moving shit around while they can before like the bill comes due. So I don't think they're like egregious mistakes. Like I don't think it's a John Collins for nothing kind of trade, but I don't see the vision.
They lost on both trades.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, I mean they lost, but it wasn't like they gave up John Collins where they got a guy they're gonna cut in 1 second rounder. So I said C. I could totally see C- here. I just think they got okay players. They didn't reach on anybody. They didn't, take some wild flyer. They picked up Adam Flagler and Caleb McConnell as unrestricted. I think again, good college, solid college players. I like Flagler a little bit more because of the shooting upside, but I think there's 4 players that they've added to their roster The 2 that they drafted, I think, were good. Like, that's exactly where they should have gone. And I think the 2 undrafted guys have a shot. They're okay players, but they're not like, oh man, that what a steal. Like, they got that guy, like they signed him. So I said C. I could see C minus, but I think C, like it was just an draft.
Yeah, I think C minus. Yeah, that's where I would be on it.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm going to say real quick. I do agree. I just think it's like it's a solid draft. It's like nothing crazy. But I will say I don't think they got like fleeced here on the Wallace deal. Like I think that's why the Thunder are in the position that they're in. They have such an embarrassment of riches with young players, aren't paying anybody, that if they want to trade up 2 picks, because I did think that maybe the Magic, I mean, maybe not so much for taking Black at 6, but I did think that they were potentially a player for Casey Wallace at 11. So you move up 2 picks. The beauty of the roster is you're not really paying anybody. You can afford to take on a contract like Bertans to do that if that's the guy you want. You don't have to give up any draft capital. All you have to do is take on a player that's not like going to strap you from doing anything. So I actually like the trade. I actually like the trade for them.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think
It's
it
really just that
benefited
Denver
both
trade.
people. Like I think it benefited both people. Everybody got what they wanted.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Really, just that Denver trade. That one to me, and I think Cam's right on that. And that was a really good point, Jay. Like, they're like, screw it. We got 6 more picks coming down the pipe anyways. What's one of them? Like, the Thunder are the type of team that they want a player for the next 3 to 4 years in the draft. They're probably going to get them. Unless it's like a Wembanyama type hype situation. So I think that's a good point. And that Denver trade still confuses the hell out of me, though. There's a lot of moving parts for pretty inconsequential picks.
Yeah. I mean, anything can happen in the NBA. That Denver pick could end up being valuable. Who knows? Right? It helps them keep moving things down the road, too. They get to keep some of that draft capital for once they're actually good. But I mean, I just think from like a player value aspect, I feel about Cason Wallace about the way that I felt about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander when he was in the draft. Like, some people really love him. I didn't see a whole lot of him at Kentucky. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is like first team All NBA caliber now. I really liked him once he hit the league.
I really liked Shai in Kentucky.
I liked him, but it wasn't like, oh my God.
I didn't see this coming.
I
did not see
I
this
liked
coming.
Shai better than both Maxey and Wallace.
That's fair.
Between Maxey and Wallace, I would call that close. I think, that's close.
And I mean, I didn't like Maxey really at all at Kentucky.
No, I didn't either. He wasn't as good as an offensive player as he is in the NBA. And I thought he actually played better defense at Kentucky than he does in the NBA. So it's kind of been a shift of who he was. I think Wallace has the potential to be not a Maxey-like player, but have that same kind of value, that same kind of, I don't think anyone ever thinks Maxey's going to be like the number 1 guy, but I think he's always going to be a nice number 2 guy, and I think, Wallace could fall into that as well. But Wallace might do it more as a defender and playmaker as opposed to a scorer,
He's more going to be like a Marcus Smart than a Shai. Or
a Chris Paul, where scoring isn't the first thing that he brings to the table, Yeah. All right. The next team is Jake's Orlando Magic. I have strong feelings about this draft, but I'll let Jake talk first, and maybe he has the same strong feelings as I do.
I mean, I'm willing to be swayed either way. For every single one, I want to hear whatever he's got to say. So Magic, 2 picks. They traded their 2nd round pick. They take Arkansas's Anthony Black at number 6, and they take Jet Howard at number 11. When we did our mock draft, I had Jet Howard. I picked Jet Howard with one of my teams, but it was not the Orlando Magic at 11, rather the Memphis Grizzlies at pick number 25. So I think they did reach a little bit. However, he's a jumbo forward who can shoot very, very well, who's got very smooth mechanics, who I think will be a great shooter in the NBA. But he's a young guy. He's going to have to develop other skills. Here's the thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way. They had Andre Jackson, and they traded him for a third-round pick, a second-round pick 7 years from now, and cash. This has been the worst team the last 10 years in the NBA. The worst record, not close to any sort of playoff success. And they had a guy in Andre Jackson who would have been a terrific value to add the two young guys in the lottery, and they traded him for a guy who's like 10 years old right now or something, and cash. I gave it a C- because of the Jackson trade, maybe a bit of a reach for Jett Howard. I'm not going to act like Anthony Black was a reach. I felt like every mock I saw him had him mocked 8 to the Wizards. So I'm not going to act like that's a reach. But I did think that they maybe reached for Jett a little bit, and I do think that Cam Whitmore would have been like a spectacular pick at number 11 for them. Because of that, I had him at a C-. Honestly, I was leaning more toward a C or a C, but I would like to hear what other people have to say. I'm willing to be swayed in either direction.
I'm good with this C-. Honestly, I'm good with the C-. I like Anthony Black. I know like Booney was super low on him. I really like him because I think the kid's made of the right stuff and he has transferable skills. But this team also has Cole Anthony, Jalen. Like they already have young guards. So you added another one to that mix. So who's going to be the odd man out there? None of them are good enough shooters to all play together. Jett Howard was a total reach to me. And then I agree with Jake. You gave up Andre Jackson for a kid who's playing at the rec center right now, playing like in a penny at a little summer league camp. Like that, you gave him up for literally nothing. Like I honestly, I'm cool with the C- because I think you drafted a player. Like this is a team where like start getting talent to fit the need. Like you've been rebuilding for 5-6 years. Like you just took Suggs 5 last year. Like start drafting guys. How they didn't draft Cam Whitmore is honestly shocking to me. The one person they don't have a wing. They have all these like 7-footers that they've slowly been getting rid of. They've got all these guards. They don't have a wing outside of Wagner. And Cam's ceiling is higher than that. So it still fits the timeline. It still gives you the highest upside guy. It fills a position of need. Instead, you reach for Jett Howard, and then a guy that would have been a really good value pick, that would have probably been a good stabilizer in your second unit, as a guy that's probably going to stick around. You give him away for no reason. I'm cool with the C-.
I agree with you there. You want to go ahead, Rich?
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You or me.
Okay. The thing that doesn't make any sense to me with the Howard pick, like I can see the reach on him. He's a big guy. He can shoot. He's got a real offensive skill set. I worry about the fit on their team. I mean, their roster is basically defined by Paolo Banchero and by Franz Wagner, who both play Jett Howard's position. So why get a wing, get a guard, right? They have a bunch of guards, but I don't think any of them are particularly going to blow you away. I mean, really, Fultz was their best guard last year. If you're watching the Magic, I don't know. I still think, I even think Black is a reach at 6. I'm not sure that he's really a point guard, which I think the real value in him is having this big point guard. I mean, if the shot doesn't come around, you're really looking at like a Michael Carter-Williams type of player, where sure, he can stick defensively, but if he gives you nothing on offense, what are you getting? Can't shoot free throws, can't shoot threes. He's not particularly great off the bounce.
What you're getting is you're getting a Lou Dort.
You're getting a Dort, yeah, at 6, which is not great value. I don't see these picks. And again, with the Andre Jackson thing, we're beating it to death. But again, sure, maybe one day that second rounder will turn into a guy like Kobe Brown. But you don't know that. Then that's 10 years from now. So, I mean, yeah, I think C-. They could hit. I mean, Anthony Black could be really good, but he's a developmental story. I agree with the mentality side from Drew. Like, the kid was also, I don't know if you guys know this, he was like a top 10 wide receiver prospect in football.
Yeah,
he chose basketball.
Elite wide receiver.
Yeah, he's a legit athlete. I'm sure that he is more than committed, has like the head on his shoulders to become a real star, but I don't see it in the performance and the skill set. Yeah, I just think it's a really rough look for the Magic.
All right,
Rich.
you're going to actually be surprised by my take. I'm not so down on the Andre Jackson thing, though I do agree with you, but it doesn't like really get on my nerves because they took Black. And so I think you don't really want both Black and Jackson on the same team because you got kind of two of the same guy. So yeah. And the pick that I probably hated the most in this draft was Jet Howard at 11. I'm going to tell you right now, write it down, and then make me pay for your beers later if I'm wrong. Derek Lively will be a better player than Jet Howard, and Cam Whitmore will be a better player than Jet Howard. They could have had either. And if you look at that roster, I've never liked Wendell Carter. Their other options at center are Bol and Goga
Batadze.
Right. Those are their other options at center. They could have had Derek Lively. They could have had Cam Whitmore. They needed Derek Lively. You know, you need one player who you can start that really plays great defense to be a winner. And they had it, and they went with a guy that all he could do is shoot, and probably all he will ever do is shoot. They even took him before Grady Dick.
Yeah. Yep.
It was the worst pick in this draft.
They took him over Grady Dick and Hawkins. They took him over the two best shooters in the draft.
Right. I forgot about Hawkins, right?
Yeah. The highest I could have done Howard was 18 to the Heat just because Juwan Howard played there. A little nepotism.
Didn't he play for
That would be the only
Magic
reason.
too? Did he play for the Magic at one time?
He played for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's fair.
All right. So we'll move on to my Sixers. And I gave him a passing grade. And I actually thought about giving him a little higher grade. So I'll let you guys let me know if I should bump it up a little bit. How do I give the team a passing grade that has no picks? Well, they made some great signings after the draft. They added two players considered by most to be mid-second round players, and Tre'Quavion Smith and Ricky Council. And then they also added two players who were once considered potential first-round picks in Azuolas Tubelis and Marcus Bagley. They're all different. You know, Tre'Quavion Smith is kind of a scorer. He's small, but he's very athletic. And if he learns how to rein in his shot, shoot a little better, and become more of a playmaker, I think they'd have a really good point guard on their hands. Ricky Council is very athletic. What he's missing is a consistent jump shot. Tubelis can run the floor, can rebound, can even block some shots. Again, what's missing to make him probably needs, a little more foot speed. If he can get that and a jump shot, again. Bagley, we know, can shoot at 6'9", but he's been hardly played in 3 years in college. So he's a little bit of a mystery, a little bit of a potential head case. And so he's probably the least player I'm enthusiastic about. I'd actually be surprised if he survives. But if he does, this is a guy that people thought were going to be a first-round pick when he was considered I guess he was I don't know if he's a McDonald's All-American, but I know he's a top 30 recruit. So I gave the Sixers a D+, but I could definitely move it up to a C-. What do you guys think?
I'm still at D+. I like Ricky Council and Tre'Quavion Smith. I think those were good. I've seen Tubelis play his entire college career, and he's a good player. I don't know, like the NBA fit. Like I'm not sure. I'm so out on Marcus Bagley. I'm so done with him. That's like a non-factor. I don't see him on here, in my opinion. He's not going to make it, and I just don't see it. So I think D+ is fine because the first two I think were good gets. Tubelis has a shot because there's a good skill set there. It's just if he can work on some of the physical elements, get a little bit stronger, a little bit faster. But yeah, Bagley's a
The other
non-factor.
thing is, all these guys are pretty young. Smith is 20, Tabellis is 20, Bagley, I believe, is only 21, and I think Council's only 22. So
I do see a world where Council and Smith are in the NBA as like rotational guards. Like that for sure I can get my head around. So I think those were really good signings for this team.
Quavion Smith was the highest guy on my draft board that didn't get drafted, had him in the mid-30s. And I really think he could be a really solid backup point guard in this league if he can shore up that jump shot and become, rein in his desire to score all the time and become more of a distributor.
Yeah, you can be a Bones Highland type guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very good.
I mean, the guys that they got, do you happen to know which ones are two ways and which are Exhibit 10?
Smith and Council are two ways. I think Tabellis is also two way because they got rid of all their current two ways. Yeah. Bagley is a Exhibit 10.
Exhibit 10. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better too, because I don't see Bagley on here at all. And in Exhibit 10, he basically isn't.
Right.
He's a flyer. Right. Pretty much come in, see if he can make a roster spot at training camp.
Right.
I like the Tubelis flyer as an undrafted free agent. I don't really see it for him. I just don't see him as a draftable player with his current skill set.
Mm-hmm.
But he is talented. Like I would put him pretty high on my undrafted free agent board.
Mm-hmm.
Getting Smith and Council, those guys, again, sounds like players that were asking to not be drafted so that they could get this contract, especially Terquavion Smith, because I'm pretty shocked that he didn't get picked. For a team to come away with some guys that could fit a rotation and might be doing so sooner rather than later, given the way the Sixers free agency is currently going. I like it. I think they did a good job. I would be cool bumping it up to a C minus. Come away with these guys with no picks. That's pretty impressive.
All right, Jake Jackson, you guys got a thought here? Because Drew's happy with a D plus. I'd like to raise it. Cam would like to raise it. Can we raise it?
I would like to, yes, to get these guys not having any picks, and I felt like they the thing is, they don't really have too much in the arsenal. It used to be the process for the stock picks, and they started trading all of them. And now they don't have it. So, but to get these guys, yes, I do. Like, I'd rather have Terquavion Smith than Korkmaz, to be honest with you right now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. I see that.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, but they might have got a guy who could at least be on the team.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Rich,
so I'm with it. I'm willing to raise it.
Consider this C your consolation prize for your team not making the playoffs next year.
I only gave him a C minus, so So Booney had the Suns, which I took over, and all they had was one pick, especially after the Bradley Beal trade, which everyone knows about at this point. They didn't give up a first round pick, amazingly. And they did give up Chris Paul, which turned out to get Washington a pretty good haul. So, and they gave up six second round picks and 4 first round pick swaps, which may or may not be significant. Their only pick was Tamari Kamara at 52. I wasn't really high on Kamara. I know a lot of other people were. I thought there were better players that could have been taken at this spot. And it's like Cam said earlier in the show, basically with Bradley Beal, maybe the Suns win a title or two over the next few years. But, all these guys that they have on the team beside Ayton, oh, no, I guess Booker and Ayton, Booker's under 30 as well. But, I think Kevin Durant's clearly on the downside. I think Bradley Beal's clearly on the downside. So I don't think the window is huge. And if they don't win a title or two over the next few years, they are going to be miserable for like a decade because they have nothing left. They've just sold all their future. So I don't like what they did at all. And so I gave him an F. And
yeah, F.
Agreed.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised.
How long do you think the window is, guys? I'm
3
thinking
years. 3 years.
3 years. Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
3
it.
years.
2 to 3.
I was going to say, if they're
I
lucky,
would definitely think the window's shorter than it would be longer than 3. I think 3 is the max.
It might be 2. It might be 2. But KD's durability, it really might be 2.
Yeah, Durant is not looking good anymore, man. I mean, I'm not saying he's kind of like where LeBron is. He's clearly just not himself anymore.
Yeah, he looks wobbly out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, to think that they're basically trading away 8 years for 2.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. I just would never run an organization like they do or the Lakers. I mean, look at Boston. Boston still has draft picks. Boston still has some youth on their team. Boston, they just got a bunch of picks in this past draft using 1 first-round pick. That's the way you run an organization, not like the Lakers, not like the Suns, constantly having to sign all these washed-up veterans on minimum contracts.
Yep.
Totally. Well, the only reason the Lakers can do it is because they're the Lakers. They're in LA. It's one of the most desirable markets.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, right? I mean, it's Phoenix. Not many people want to play there. It's like 120 degrees every day. I'm not trying to live
They
there.
play in the air. They play inside in the air conditioning.
Yeah, they play in AC.
Well, it might break. Who knows? I don't want to be there.
I just had visions after this trade of the Sun Kings, on Game of Zones. I actually went back on YouTube and watched that again. It's because, here's where we're. Actually, the Kings are good now, but the Suns are right back where they used to be when they were trying to become the Sun Kings. Or not far away. Not far away. Let's put it that way. All right, so Portland Trailblazers, man, they had some draft picks and a lot of talk about this team. Have they signed anyone, by the way? Have we heard anything about them signing anyone?
So Jeremy Grant is back. What was it, Cam? It was 160 for 3? Was it 5?
It was for 5.
5. So they did bring back Jeremy Grant.
5 years. Yeah.
Is the big one.
So they're paying him about $30.
It's a big deal.
$33 million a year.
He's making more than quite a few big name players. I know it's inflation.
Here's the crazy thing. Even before we get into the draft, because I don't think any of these guys are going to impact this team to any huge degree this year. Not even Scoot Henderson. Even with Grant, this team is terrible.
Not good.
Yeah. It's just, what are you doing?
They need to trade Dame. That's what they need to do.
That's what they should have done, but they shouldn't have signed Grant. They shouldn't have signed Grant. Trade Dame and don't sign Grant.
Oh, it's too late now. They're not going to get rid of Dame. They're not paying Grant all that money to be.
I don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs. But anyway, we'll talk about their draft.
Go ahead.
Cam.
I got a take. No, I'll wait for you. I got a take.
I know we just spent 2 minutes just laying into the Blazers. I totally agree. But from just looking at their draft, I did give them an A-. Mostly based on the 3 players that they drafted, because I think the 3 guys that they actually spent picks on each kind of fall into one of the common draft categories. You start off with Scoot Henderson, who they took 3rd overall. There's questions about Scoot, particularly with the shooting. I'm not super high on him. I know Booney thinks he's a generational talent, compares him to a Westbrook, a Ja. Those guys have never won anything in the NBA. So while they're great players, the reality stands is this type of player build, there are questions if you can really win with this type of a player build if they don't learn how to shoot. But look, he was the best player on the board, generally considered the number 2 option overall. I have no problems with it. It's a top 3 pick. You got to take the swing here. The next guy was Chris Murray, which is probably my favorite pick out of the 3 just in terms of value, need. I didn't think they'd re-sign Jeremy Grant. I thought I didn't know what the hell they were going to do. I thought they should have got rid of Dame, should have let Grant go. But I thought Chris Murray was the type of guy that could fill into that role, just a solid player who can come in, impact the game in a variety of ways. He's not an elite player by any stretch, but he can step out, hit a three. He can rebound. He's played basketball at a high level, had a really great breakout year. Just a good overall, just a good pick. We had him mocked at 24 in our draft. I think that's where Cam, I think you took him in that ballpark when we did a mock, give or take. Like, I like the pick there. And then someone I'm not super familiar with, was it Ryan Rupert?
Rayan
Rupert at 43. I had to go back because I know we talked about him when we did the mock, but I went back and kind of did a little more research and looked into him. And I think at 43 for this type of team, I thought it was a pretty good upside pick.
Mm-hmm.
Measurements wise, you're looking at a 7'2" wingspan, 19-year-old. Like, the physical traits are there. I know the stat line was not very impressive at all, but as I went back and watched a little bit, I would see the flashes and the glimpses like, oh, okay, that's what you're drafting him for. If that can become the norm, you got a player on your hands. And he fits in that category of like the project, the 2-3 years away kind of guy.
He's the typical Portland pick we've seen over the years.
Exactly. Now at 43, I'm cool with it though.
Yeah,
like at 43, right. I'm like, this is where you take a guy like this.
At number 7, I'm not so cool with it.
Exactly. So I really liked their draft from that standpoint. Now I'm in the camp of let Grant go and trade Dame and rebuild with these guys. That looks like it's not going to happen. So in the team's ability to win, these guys aren't big needle movers like we said. But in terms of just adding the talent, I like it. They're 2 undrafted free agents I'm a little less high on. Like, I love Malachi Smith as a Zag. Like, he played well for my team. He brings energy. He can shoot a little bit, some secondary playmaking. I'm just not sold on him in the NBA. I think his best bet at trying to get drafted would have been to come back one more year, be the starting 2 guard on this team, and really try to recapture some of that when he was with Chattanooga, recapture some of that where he was scoring 20 a game and doing a little of everything because he would have a bigger role with Timmy and Strother gone. But, you know, he chooses to go this route. He's undrafted. I don't think he's a needle mover. Could he stick on a roster? I think he can because he brings energy. He's a competitive guy and he has some skills.
Big and physical, too.
Big and physical, but, you know, he's not a jump off the page screen athlete. No. So it balances out. And then Antoine Davis, college legend. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest pure scorers college basketball has ever seen. And he improved as a three-point shooter. But he's like a 6'1" guard. He weighs, I think, like 165 pounds. So right off the bat, there's physical limitations. Didn't do a lot of winning. I mean, we're talking about empty calories on a team that wasn't very good. You know, he played Washington State this year, which was by no means a high-level Power 5 conference. He did not play well, and they got destroyed. Played Cincinnati, who is not the Cincinnati of years past, where they were like a 3 seed in the tournament. Did not play well. They got destroyed. So he's a great college story, but I'm not sure about a player that kind of got to do whatever he wanted and had the greenest of lights. It's like you put up these numbers, but your efficiency wasn't great. Like, you played 5 years, so, like, you know, you think, oh, second leading scorer.
For his father.
Yeah, for his father. Yeah, it's just I'm not sold on him as an NBA player. I don't see it for physical. The story's great, the stat line. The raw numbers look okay, but you start digging into things like efficiency, play style, and you're like, I don't know. So that's what keeps them from getting like an A or an A+. The undrafted guys don't move the needle, but all 3 guys they picked up, I do like. With all that being said, this team still sucks.
I like your grade of A-. I can't argue with that. I just, you know, the only thing I can think of is if they're going to have to make a move. You know what, though? If they were going to do, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do now.
At this point, if they are going to ride with Dame and Jeremy Grant, their best bet might be to move Scoot and try to go get another, like, form of a big 3 with somebody. Yeah. That might be like that.
Who else makes salary on that team? Nurkic?
He's actually
Simons.
Not as big as I thought. Oh, Simons is signed an extension.
How much does Simons and Nurkic add up to?
Simons is 25 because he signed a 4-year, $100 million. I think Nurkic is around 14 to 17 range. He's under 20.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
I'll take Scoot, Nurkic, and Simons for Embiid.
That to me is their best avenue if they want to compete.
Oh,
they have to.
And a first round pick or 2
off the dome, Rich.
That's nice. I don't hate that. It gives Portland a chance, and the 76ers get some legit cornerstones. They get a combination of playable pieces and the upside guy in Scoot. So,
and they get rid of the most overrated player of maybe perhaps
Rich,
headed
we gave you
to.
your C. You can't do it. We gave you your C. You should be happy now.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not
Here's my
happy
take.
until Harden and Embiid are gone.
Yeah, that might not be. It might not take long, my man. It might not take long.
Good.
Okay. Here's my quick take. This team still clearly hasn't decided what they want to do either. Because Chris Murray is a pick that says to me, we're keeping Dame no matter what. Scoot says to me, we might trade Dame. To me, this was the moment to make a decision. If you're going to keep Dame, you trade the number 3 pick in a couple of seconds, move up with Charlotte, and take Brandon Miller. Because he fits. He fits a need that they've had for years. They've never had a wing that can score, ever. They went out and signed Jeremy Grant, and he's not that guy. Really good player, but not quite that guy. I love Scoot. I'm on the spectrum. I'm closer to Booney, where Booney's at with him. I think he's got the mindset. He's got the physical tools. He's got like crazy drive and motor, and he has some really good feel with the ball in his hands. I think he is on that trajectory of like a Derrick Rose type of player. I think he can get there one day. I really like Rupert, but again, he's a project. He's not a guy that's going to help them win now. They don't know which way they're going either. They should have made the decision now instead of kicking the can down the road again.
Yep. I can't disagree there.
That being said, though, I like what they got.
Yeah.
I think it could be an A. I don't love the undrafted guys, but I think Rupert at 43 is really, really good value.
Yeah.
I like his upside.
I wouldn't have any. It's just, I can't argue with it. I could give him an A. Definitely. Next up, we're going to talk about Jackson's Sacramento Kings. What do you got for the Kings?
For the Kings, they got Colby Jones at 34 and Jalen Slauson at 54. They got Colby Jones in the Celtics trade for the 38th pick and future Mavs 2024 second round pick. So overall, I think the Kings did pretty well to get a couple of guys that will be rotational players on the wing. Colby Jones, good 3-and-D player, I think. And I think Slauson will provide some value on the defensive end. I think we talked about the Mavs trade for Omax, and they gave up Omax and Rashawn Holmes and I think we just said it was the trade exception, right?
That's all we know to date. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now I have it at a C plus because I think they got 2 solid guys for to add to their wing depth. I actually really like Colby Jones for just 3-and-D, probably backup. But I know they just re-signed Harrison Barnes, and they'll add for their bench depth. But I mean, for our offseason grade, which we'll do next week, I think it really just depends if they use that trade exemption to get someone else. Because otherwise, I mean, they really gave up just to clear out Rashawn Holmes. They gave up a first round pick, which I think they could have used as a rotation guy. So I guess it really just depends on if they're able to use that trade exemption to get another impact player.
Yeah, I agree. I think not knowing, what's going to be the ultimate of that trade, kind of swings me. But I think they're definitely in the C range right now. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the San Antonio Spurs, who obviously got Victor Wembanyama at number 1, CD Sissoko at 44, and then they signed 2 of the better undrafted free agents out there, and Serge Jabari Rice, Texas guard, and Charles Bediako, Alabama center. They had 1 trade in there where they sent they acquired the 2 picks from the Timberwolves, so the Timberwolves could take Leonard Miller at 33. Obviously, Wembanyama was a gem of the draft. I feel pretty confident in saying that. I don't think maybe he's all what everybody said he was, but I still think he's the best player in this draft and should be an all-star for years to come. They selected a solid wing with upside, Sissoko in the second round, added 2 futures second rounders, and by trading away pick 33, and they also signed the 2 solid undrafted free agents. What they did fail to do is come away with a starting point guard, a true starting point guard. Right now, they have Trey Jones. And I think, at a minimum, maybe a 2-man approach of maybe Trey Jones, who would be the more offensive option, and Andre Jackson would have been the more defensive action, would have been a good fallback plan instead of trading pick 33. So that's the only thing, I saw that was maybe something I would have done is I would have held on to pick 33, but they did, get 2 picks for 1. So, of course, 33, you can't do much better than that in the second round. So for all they know, they might get, picks 45 and 50 out of it, down the road, though, with the way the Timberwolves are going. But anyway, I gave him an A. Any dispute here?
You got Wembanyama, you get an A. Anything else is like insufficient. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
I will say it's been funny to see people react to his little warm up in San Antonio, and they're like, "Wait, he can't actually shoot? Like, did you look at his stats? Did you watch one game? No, he can't shoot yet. He's got
Yeah, what are you
potential,
talking about?
but-
I get all my stuff off of like some random Twitter account, dude. Come on,
Yeah.
come on. You don't get your
I watched
NBA
one
news.
G-League game, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, it's 7'3" Dirk Nowitzki. Oh my god.
Who has the defensive upside of Hakeem, right?
Well, you see, what threw people off was the way he played against Ignite. Against Ignite, he played really, really well. And he seemed that everything he threw up went in, and he blocked a bunch of shots, including a bunch on Scoot. And, he just looked fantastic in those games. But, when he played against real men, it looked a little different. But people think that going to Europe is somehow less than the G League and less than college. And I'm like, hell no. Just look, you can just pick 100 random players who have gone from college to Europe, and I'd say 95 of them, at least 90, have far worse stats in college than they do in Europe, because it's a huge jump.
It is.
But people don't get that.
He's still pretty clearly the one. They didn't mess it up. I think they were locked into him no matter what, because you couldn't trade that pick because the hype was too high, and you couldn't take anybody else because the hype was too high. But I still think he's the number 1 pick. The upside is ridiculous. Outside of that, I really like Sissoko. He's somebody that I feel like every year we go through the draft, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I was too low on that guy. I think Sissoko is one of those for me. I love what he can do in transition. He's a really good passer. And the size.
Got a nice shooting stroke. He's not consistent with it yet. But some games will hit 5 or 6. And then some games will go 0 for 6. But his shot is not looking bad. And he's got the body, man. He's just gotta get that baby.
And he's also French, so we might see eventually a full starting lineup of French players. Maybe they'll go out and sign Killian Hayes,
and maybe Tony Parker will place Pop when he retires.
Yeah, there you go.
They'll just speak French on the court. They'll be able to call their plays and say all kinds of nasty things to the ref, and the ref won't know any different.
That's an advantage. Be like Kobe and Pau Gasol speaking Spanish and Italian.
There you go. All right, speaking of French, we're going to move up for the one Canadian team in the league, and that's Jake's Toronto Raptors. What do you got, Jake?
So, they only had 1 draft pick. It was number 13, and they got Grady Dick. And then as far as I can tell, they only have a couple guys signed to their third summer league roster yet. It's not finalized, at least from what I've seen. So far, Desmond Cambridge, Grady Dick, obviously, DJ Hogue, Marquise Noel, Kevin O'Banner, and JT Shoemate from Toledo. But Marquise Noel was like their big undrafted free agent, I guess. I gave them a B+, and would almost be willing to push it up to an A. They only had 1 pick, and I don't think they expected Grady Dick to be there. So for the value that they got, a developmental guy that will play right now and I think will develop and be a very good player in the NBA, I gave them a B+, but might want to put that up to an A-. They did as good as you could have done with the 1 pick they had.
And they needed shooting, and they got a shooter.
They got it. They got maybe the best, one of the, if not the best in the draft. He's up there. It's not
Yeah, I agree. I can't put him in the A range just because they only came away one player, and I'm not sure. I love Marquise, friend of the show, but I just, at his size, I just don't know if he's going to cut it. So I think B+ is right where they should be.
Yeah. Well, I really like Marquise Noel, especially knowing that breaking news, Fred VanVleet, he's signing in Houston.
Yeah, that's no surprise.
They're going to have the open spot at point guard.
Yeah. I just don't think Marquise is big enough.
I will say, though, if I'm taking an undrafted flyer, that's the type of mentality-wise, this is the type of guy you bet on. Because, A, if he hits, the loyalty that you build, the trust, and you know he can play. You know this guy can hoop. Like, he's got that inherent basketball gene. It's just a physical thing. So, does he stick? I don't know. But it's going to be damn tough. But if he does, Grady Dick's a great value at 13. And you never know, man. Crazier things happen in the NBA than Marquise Noel being a good player.
This is how they got Fred VanVleet.
Yeah.
I mean, the same things that we're saying about Noel were said about Fred VanVleet.
Yeah, but Fred VanVleet's almost got a half a foot on him.
Yeah.
No, he's like 6 foot. He's a short guard.
All right, so he's got 4 inches on him.
4 inches is a lot. I'll give you that. But Noel, skill-wise, he fits.
Yeah, How tall was Isaiah Thomas of the Celtics?
About the same height.
About 5.
He might have had an inch on him, but who knows? That could be a fake inch.
Right. Yeah, so, I think Isaiah Thomas and he are about the same size. So it's not out of the realm. It's been done before. Tiny Archibald was that size for the Celtics back in the day, and the Kansas City Royals, for those of you old enough to remember them, who became the Sacramento Kings. So next up is the Utah Jazz. This is one of Booney's teams, and I must say, I think they did the best overall job, and I'll get to that. Why? They're coming off a season where they exceeded expectations and almost made the play-in tournament. And in the draft, they come away with 3 lottery-type players. I'm not saying these are guys that could have gone in the lottery. And of course, Bryce Sensabaugh, the Ohio State small forward, wing, if you will, was one of the bigger steals of the draft, in my opinion. They got him at 28. They got Keontae George at 16. They got Taylor Hendricks at 9. And they also picked up Joey Hauser, Sam Hauser's younger brother. Really good shooter from Michigan State. Just don't know if he has enough athleticism to make it, but certainly can fill it up from deep. But what to me pushes Utah over the edge was the acquisition of John Collins. Now, I'm not a huge John Collins fan. I know he's very athletic. I know he can score inside and out. I know his scoring has dropped off last couple of years, but he's still a 16-point per game guy. He right now, I'm not just talking current players. I'm talking about all time. He ranks 9th all time in the NBA for effective field goal percentage at 59.3. So in addition to that nice haul they got in the draft, which was balanced too, you got the big and Hendricks, you got the middle guy in Sensabaugh, then you got the little guy in Keontae George, and George and Sensabaugh are both excellent at creating their own shots. And then you get John Collins for free. So I had to give him an A+. Anybody disagree?
Best draft day haul. I don't think it's – I know there's been concerns about Collins. Like, he had that finger injury, and his three-point percentage has been significantly lower since. But it's like, even if he doesn't return to 40, damn near 40% three-point shooter, 6'10" athlete who will contest at the rim and can give you 15 points and 8 rebounds on high efficiency without the 3-ball, and you got him for free. Warriors, why didn't we make that trade? We could have given you at least a – if we traded Jordan Poole in the second for Collins, I would have been actually happy.
Yeah.
And they gave up Rudy Gay in a second. So outstanding job by the Jazz.
And Danny Ainge, Brad Stevens, man, those two, they just go around fleecing everybody else in the league.
Seriously. Yeah. if there's any question of whether or not Danny Ainge is the best GM in basketball, it needs to be put to rest after this past year that he's had control of the Jazz. Because, I mean, like, the Rudy Gobert haul alone is just incredible. But to then turn around, fleece the Hawks out of a solid starting 4/5. He could probably play 5.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The guys that they picked, too, I have no arguments with any of them.
Mhm.
You know, Keontae George could be one of those guys where, you know, again, like you kind of look back and you're like, man, maybe he's better than I thought. You know, I could see him developing into a Donovan Mitchell type of player.
Yeah.
Right? He can pour it in from deep. I don't love him at the rim. He struggles, but man, he can score. And we
Mhm.
didn't even see his best college career.
Right. We didn't see him as a playmaker, and I think he can do that too.
I think he can.
He
Hendricks,
100% can fill that Clarkson role.
oh, totally.
100%.
Hendricks is, Rich, you were moving him up the board. I agree with you.
Yeah, I moved him and moved him and moved him, and he finished at number 5. Number 5.
Yeah. He's just he's so, like, I love the term dexterity to describe him. And he's really, like, in terms of 6'9" guy, I feel like he's really 6'10". I know he didn't measure it that, but with the length, the athleticism, the timing, he just has all of those movement tools that you really need to become a next level NBA player. He's got the shot. He's got everything.
Mhm.
Sense of ball at 28, awesome value. And I like Hauser. Like, Hauser's the type of guy that succeeds as an undrafted free agent. He can shoot the living shit out of the ball. And he's got size. He has real weight size.
Yeah, he's bigger than Sam.
Yeah. You can't do it any better than this.
Nope.
You would have expected them to be in mediocrity for years, and they really were a playoff team last year. They pulled the plug.
Yes.
This team is ready.
They rested anybody who had a nick or a torn thumbnail or whatever got sat in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Danny Ainge is over in Syracuse or wherever watching, some random guy at 200 on our board play.
Mm-hmm.
He truly knows basketball. He knows how to finesse other teams out of guys that they could care less about. Incredible draft night.
All right. So I'm glad you approve of my A+, gentlemen. All right, so we're going to wrap up the draft with probably the busiest team of the whole process. Drew or Cam, you got a lot to go through here. I could probably sum up by saying, I didn't like the Bradley Beal trade, but then they turned around and made it all back up with Golden State. So, and then I think the rest of their trades, I wasn't crazy about it, but they're pretty much even. You get it. So I think, you can go through it yourself, but you look at these 6 trades, and I think, I don't know if they gained or lost, but I think in the long run, I think they gained.
They gained clarity, and that's worth something. They gained legitimate organizational clarity. I know that sounds like kind of cheesy and super pumped, but like that's what they gained, and that has value.
Right.
I agree. Yeah.
I think Poole and Tyus Jones are worthy players. I mean, they're not KP and Beal, but yeah. But anyway, Cam, it's your team. Go on.
Yeah, man. I mean, clarity is a great way of putting it, right? I have a really hard time rating what they did on draft night and leading up to it, because, like you said, Rich, there were moves that I didn't like, moves that I really liked, and then in the middle, just kind of like, why? My big thing is, like, if you're gonna pull a teardown like this, I want to see more firsts coming in the door. Granted, they got an absolutely, unheard of number of second round picks from the Suns, so that's capital that they can flip at some point down the road. And the Chris Paul deal kind of turns it around for me. Because, you bring in a guy that you don't want anymore. He never plays a game for you. and you then again turn him around for multiple picks. That's a great deal. And on top of that, you're bringing in Jordan Poole, who, in my opinion, is currently an overpaid player in the NBA. But they're going into a sort of tanking scenario. They can afford to pay him, and who knows? When he got that contract, he was worth it, right? That he was really on the up and up, and he got his soul punched out of him or something by Draymond Green in the past year. Maybe you refurbish his career. He keeps going on that trajectory as sort of a starting combo guard. Tyus Jones, great pickup, really solid starting point guard. I mean, he's been the best backup point guard in the league for years at this point. Really, really solid player. You take on some contracts, grab a couple more picks. The thing that I don't love that they did was they actually traded out of some guys that I really, really like in this draft. They obviously traded out Trace Jackson Davis, who you're probably tired of hearing about at this point, so we won't go into it. The one that I really was questioning was they traded out Julian Phillips. Right? They got him for, I mean, as a throw-in in the Porzingis trade, and I really like his upside. He's a project, but that's the type of guy that they're going to be looking for in the next couple of years, especially a guy like you're going to play alongside one of their really awesome draft picks in Coulibaly. I don't see him. I don't see those 2 seconds that they got for Phillips being worth it. I think he's going to be a really solid player. And again, it's another one of the kind of odd moves. I don't understand trading up for Coulibaly.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
I don't get it either. I don't think Indiana was going to take him. I don't think Indiana.
They were not going to take him.
Nobody.
No way they were going to take him.
They had been like drooling over Jarris Walker for months at this point. There's just no way that they're taking Coulibaly, so the Pacers fleeced them. I mean, getting any sort of capital for that pick was nuts, just to move down one pick. And again, Coulibaly might be a little bit early. It's a little bit of a reach.
We said so. I said so to Drew when he took him like 11.
I took him 12.
12 in our mock draft, and I thought that was a little early.
I really like him, and historically, the guys with those really late growth spurts are going to be good, right? Because he was a guard his entire life until 2020, and he hit this huge growth spurt. Generally, those guys pan out really, really well because he's grown up with guard skills, and now he's morphed into this strange 6'6" spider body. Picking up Vukcevic at 42, good value. I like that pickup. Could turn into a sort of player like Vucevic, who we just saw re-sign with the Bulls. I went with a B- here. I think there was more value for them to eke out of this draft, out of the guys that they've traded away. I don't know. This very easily could have turned into an A draft for them.
Yeah.
And there's something missing here.
Yeah, I agree. I think they could have got more. I think they gave away too much in a lot of their trades, or didn't get enough in a lot of their trades. So 100%. I'm with you on a B-. It was all said and done. They come away with Poole, Tyus Jones, Coulibaly, and a project and Vucevic. So I don't know. I mean, they lost KP and Beal, so.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when you really go back to that's what they've traded, it's a nice haul. KP had a career year, but with the injury history,
right,
you're going to cash in now. It's a smart move to trade him now. With Beal, they missed the boat. He should have been traded 2 years ago.
Yes.
But to get what they got for him is insane, especially with the fact that he has a no trade clause. So that kind of maybe makes me want to push it up. But
yeah, I could see a B or a B+. I don't know. What do you rest of you think?
I'm good. I'm actually good with a B. Their draft is actually like I'm tied to, and like I drafted Koulibaly and Vucevic to different teams in our mock, so like got pretty familiar with their game. I really like Koulibaly because I think he's coming in with a good baseline. Like having watched him play now, I'm like that dude competes on defense. There were moments where he took over moments and showed flashes where he was the best player on a team, featuring Victor Wembanyama for moments, and not throughout the whole year. And I think offensively, Vucevic actually has a lot of Porzingis to his game offensively. He doesn't have the rim protecting side, but he lives out. He can get on the perimeter. He'll put the ball on the deck. He'll hit fadeaways. He's a sneaky rebounder. I know the numbers don't show it, but when you watch, like he's a sneaky rebounder. So I think that he has the mold of a KP. If he can get to any sort of defensive upside, I like the pick. I like Koulibaly. 7 is early. I thought 10 to 15 was where I would have taken him, but still. And obviously, like, they got Jordan Poole. It's just, I think Cam's spot on. They left meat on the bone. It's like they got the wing, ate it. We're just happy to have it because they were in such a bad spot that they didn't like clean the plate. Like, why did you have Trace Jackson Davis? That for cash, like, I'm not giving that guy up. Like, screw it. I'm going to keep him and see what I have in him. Like, why am I giving up Phillips? We're not contending. So if he sucks for 4 years, fine. But if he's really good, we hit the jackpot. So I think this was a new front office because I believe they have a pretty much entire overhaul in the front office.
Yeah.
They got dealt a bad hand. They were desperate to try to just clean the slate. And I just think that outside of the Beal because of the no trade clause, I think this was a team that was just so ready to move on. They didn't wait to field offers. They didn't want to get into bidding wars. They said, what's the first thing that isn't completely outrageous? We're taking it. And it turned out okay for them.
Yeah. Jake, you have any final thoughts?
No, I would agree, but I think Drew, he had a good point at the very beginning. They stopped trying to hold on to Beal and say, "Oh, well, we can work something out, and we can just be like, we can sneak in the playoffs." They stopped that and said, "All right, let's shut it down. We'll just redo the whole thing." I think that's like the most valuable thing here. They stopped trying to hold on to, okay, we have this star, we're paying all these super maxes and these ridiculous contracts. Let's just start over. And I think that's the most important thing here. To me, even this team's nowhere near contending at all. I don't even care really about the upside swing with Koulibaly. I mean, it's not like it's going to affect them, like, you know what I mean? Like competing for a championship soon or anything. Like, just take your upside swing, start over. I think that's the most valuable point here.
So, Cam, what do you want the final grade to be? I think we all agree it should be somewhere in the B range.
I'd give him a B.
Okay.
It's a nice straight B. I just keep finding, the more I look at what they did, the more I find things that kind of irk me. The fact that, you're gonna trade with the Warriors for picks, but you let them keep a top 20 protection on their 2030 pick? Absolutely not. You can keep Ryan Rollins. I want that thing top 5 protected because I know you're not going to be good in 2030. That's just like a throw in the trade. They're never getting that pick. I just keep finding things that irk me. So I'm cool with a B.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Any more free agent news we should know about before we say goodnight?
Really quickly, I want to hit on the Lakers pickups because they made some moves, man. They picked up Gabe Vincent.
Yeah.
They picked up Cam Reddish for nothing, which, again, the Portland Trailblazers don't know what direction they're going. They traded for Cam Reddish mid-season.
They just let Reddish go?
They just let him walk. And they re-signed Rui to a pretty team-friendly deal. It's not amazing. It looks like they're probably, based on this, going to let D'Angelo Russell walk so that they can re-sign Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
I really like what they're doing here. Picking up Vincent is really nice.
Yeah. Shocker. I thought Miami would, he really played well in the playoffs. I thought Miami would fight to keep him.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on free agency before any other new signings come across the?
Nothing crazy. I mean,
do we hear about what's his face from Washington, Kuzma?
Yes, he's back with the Wizards.
Oh,
He's back with 100.
Yeah.
Sorry, I meant to actually make that comment when we were talking about
Wow.
them, but there was so much going on. They did so much. 103 million for 4 years, I believe. So he's back with.
I did not see that coming.
I don't really like that. Embrace the rebuild, man. Kuzma's not a needle mover, like a significant needle mover. I mean, I guess it doesn't really hurt because you pay him. They're not going to be good in 4 years, so he'll be your, de facto best player. Him and Jordan Poole will be making big money. I mean, I don't know. I just would have liked a cleaner cap sheet just so they could they can do the Thunder route. Give me all your shitty contracts. Give them all to me. Give me 1 or 2 picks every time and restock that way. I would have liked that, but I mean, I don't. It's whatever.
Yeah.
It's a good number for him.
Yeah, it's
one
not
last
an overpay.
fun one. My Tennessean is showing, but Derrick Rose just signed with the Memphis Grizzlies.
Ah,
Yep.
ah,
One last run.
very nice. In Memphis, where he started.
Yep.
Cam, do you use Sleeper? Is that where you get all your notifications from?
No, I should check
Or
that
just
out.
on Twitter?
Yeah, I'm just running Twitter.
Sleeper, it's a fantasy app, but they have it's basically Reddit for sports as well. It's like a Reddit for
Every
sports.
update.
And
Nice.
Ah,
yeah, it's literally I just had it up the entire time. It's just every single deal.
Okay,
so-
I need to grab that.
all right. We
I
gotta
do it
say
for football,
goodnight.
too.
We gotta say goodnight, gentlemen. We'll be
Yeah.
back next week to overhaul free agency. I'm gonna separate what we did today into 7 different episodes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, did we talk a lot?
Yeah.
But
It's
it
hard
was
when you
good
get smart
happens.
people, man. You get
Yeah.
passionate, smart people, and you get a lot of content.
It was good stuff. Yeah. All right. Say goodnight.
All right, gentlemen.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
guys.
Happy 4th, guys. Happy
Yes.
Fourth.
Yeah,
Have a
have
good
fun.
weekend, guys.
Enjoy, and thank you for your contributions, financial and otherwise.